Hello, everybody, and welcome to week number 3 for our 2021 season of Hot Takes. My name is TJ, and of course, this week, once again, I am joined by my very special and intelligent, pretty much a genius, co-host. It's Sottle. Sottle, how you doing today, man?
Wary. I was fine, now I'm incredibly wary. I'm not used to being complimented like that in the intro. I'm sure this is going somewhere. I'm now very much on the edge of my seat waiting to find out how this flips around and comes back to bite me.
I'm just surprised that that's not your feeling going into the show every week.
True.
No matter what I say in the intro.
True.
Because I tend to switch it up. But this week, this is our last Hot Takes episode before we go into the break for Master Tours, at least regarding Grandmasters. So I'm looking forward to it. We had Specialists this week, so it was a little bit of a change of pace. I enjoyed it. I think we haven't had that many good Specialist weeks so far in Grandmasters, but I would include this as one of them. And Sottle, I'm not going to let you agree or disagree because it's time to jump into Hot Take number 1. Same rules, as always, and hot take number 1 is the least creative region is Europe.
I mean, this basically is my response to your intro, TJ, of course Europe is the least creative region. That's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it is almost objectively true. We had 8 mages going into our first Specialist week. And obviously there was a lot more variety elsewhere with Rush Warrior hanging around, Hunter winning in Americas, Token Druid winning in APAC. We just had Mage and Priest, and that was pretty much the story of our entire week. And there is an element with European players of, they will just go gooddex.com and just bring what everyone expects them to do and play the best decks. Which, if anything, amplifies the weaknesses of Specialist as a format. But then we get into the world where the European players are complaining about playing Specialist because they've all brought the same deck as European players. And it's just very much like that meme, it's the guy shoots someone and then turns around to camera as oh, why would they do this? It's just a European player firing Incantus Flow at another mage and then turning to camera and saying, why would Specialists do this? You don't have to bring mage. You can make the format interesting, as evidenced by APAC and Americas, but for some reason, Europeans just like winning, I guess because they just got the taste for it, TJ.
I'm going to disagree with you here.
Go ahead.
So surprisingly, am I right?
Yeah.
It's not because I agree. Usually, I agree with you so much on this show.
Right.
And that's pretty much what it is you saying something and then me for 10 minutes every week saying, "Wow, Sottle."
If anything, I just wish I'd...
You're so great at life.
I wish I'd stop getting DMs from people saying the show's so boring. You two just agree with each other all the time. I'm sick of it.
So the least creative region is Europe. So I think that even though it may appear on the surface level that Europe is not being creative because they're just bringing the good decks, their goal with not bringing or not trying to be creative and beat the good decks is to make the good decks not be the good decks anymore by getting them nerfed. Right? Because if they just show mage winning all the time, right? If they just show Incantus Flow on 2, every single player just queues up mage, hard mulligans for Incantus Flow, and plays Incantus Flow on 2, and then they go into the finals, and then mage would have won, but they didn't win because of Mind Render or Lucia. Boom! Incantus Flow and Mind Render or Lucia on the chopping block. Because then you look at Americas and Asia Pacific, and Toka Druid and Face Hunter are winning. That's not as cool of a story. So Europe's just trying to be creative in how they present the decks to make the meta how they want, to manipulate Blizzard into making the meta how they want. That's the power that you have as being the perceived best region. Is if you're looking at the best region, you're assuming they're playing the best decks, and if those best decks keep winning, those decks are going to look at as being overpowered. It's actually a really creative strategy, Saul.
TJ, the fatal flaw in your argument there is assuming that the Hearthstone balance team pay any attention to the win rate of decks when good players play them. We all know that balance decisions are made around Bronze 5 players, TJ, so that's all nonsense. Come on.
See, then they're even more creative because somehow they've duped all of us for years into thinking that they're the best region, when in reality, I mean, we just had a hot take last week, and I'm pretty sure you agreed with me that Americas was doing better. In Asia Pacific, I mean, you have to have some really good players if Token Druid is winning your region. Am I right? Virtual high five. All right. Let's move to hot take number 2. Sal, I think you get a point for that one. That was, I had to do some mental jujitsu in order to find something to argue that one. So congratulations, 1-0. Saddle's winning at the moment. But we're gonna move on to hot take number 2. The Americas region's innovation will get them the win at Masters Tour Orgrimmar. America's region's innovation. All right, so similar to take 1, except it's much more defined in the sense that the Americas will win Orgrimmar because of their ability to innovate.
Sorry, TJ, you have to stop suggesting that an Americas player will win a Masters Tour. I won't be able to breathe by the end of this. Like, of course, this is a ridiculous hot take. Of course, this is nonsense. You can have basically any modifying words in the middle of this as you want to. It doesn't matter whether it's their innovation or their good looks that you think is going to win them the tournament. Of course, it's nonsense because America's players don't win anything, TJ. Of course, they're not going to win Masters Tour Orgrimmar. It's going to be most likely Europe, then maybe an APAC, and then possibly a Chinese player. And then if everyone else just doesn't turn up, potentially we might have an Americas winner, but that's the only way that's going to happen. Come on. Utter nonsense. Do better.
I mean, it has to happen at some point. Like, how many Masters Tours have we had now? A lot.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure in like the past 8 of them, an Americas player hasn't even made it into the top 2. And in most of them, an Americas player hasn't even made it into the top 4. At least for the entire qualifying period for Grandmasters last season. So I'm pretty sure just some law of mathematics and statistics determines that an Americas player should win the next Masters Tour Orgrimmar. Maybe not because of their innovation, maybe because of their innovation, but I'm pretty sure it's just about time that Americas has a player win a Masters Tour. Even if it's a fluke, I don't care. It's been like 10 of them. I think was the last person to win an Americas Masters Tour Dog? Or to win an Americas player to win Masters Tour Dog?
Eddie?
Oh, Eddie in Bucharest?
Bucharest, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago?
Yeah. Sounds
That was
right.
in 2019?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, I can't make any other arguments other than I think it's just, what do you call that?
Nonsense? Is that what you call it? I don't
No.
know. TJ, I think it's very fitting that, based on an argument around whether America's players can play a card game where a deep knowledge of statistics and probability will help them to win, that you display an American understanding of statistics and probability in trying to make an argument, therefore proving my point.
Yeah, but you don't need to understand it in order for you to just be part of the question, part of the equation, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like if you're talking about how likely is it, that my beard's going to be gray by the time I'm 40, right? It doesn't matter if I understand what the probability is. I'm still part of it. I'm still part of the probability. So, it's the same with the Americas players. They don't have to understand how likely it is for them to win a Masters Tour. But they can still kind of fall into it, They can still kind of stumble into a victory. And I think it's just been a long time now. And I think there's enough Americas players in the Masters Tour to where it's not crazy to think that some law of probability will say that it's more likely for an Americas player to win than a European player. Huh?
Some law of probability. I love this argument. It's just like, I don't even have to be able to think of what it is. I just have to suggest the possibility that it might exist, and that will be good enough for me to scam myself a point. If you give yourself a point here on the idea that America's players are going to win Masters Tours, then the integrity of this show is dead forever, TJ.
Well, because I went down the rabbit hole, I'm actually just incredibly confused right now. And I don't even remember what you said. So nobody's going to get a point because my brain just stopped working. So sorry, Sottle. It's one of the downsides of the show. I'm the only one that can award points. And if I'm just not feeling it, then nobody gets any. All right. Last hot take. Actually, was trying to Google laws of probability, and I lost my tab. Okay, here we go. Last hot take. Hot take number 3. Letta is the best player in Grandmasters.
Ooh. I think I will disagree with this and force TJ to take the other side.
God!
Yeah, why not? Let's make TJ just make arguments.
There's not a single argument that he is the best player in Grandmasters. We've seen him for 3 weeks in like 2 Masters tours, man.
All right, folks, that settles it. 2-0 Sottle. See you next week.
He hasn't even won anything yet. If he won, this would be okay. Like if he had won. But he's top 4. He wasn't even the best player this week. All right, just go ahead. Do your little argument. Let me think of something. Go ahead, Sottle.
I mean, you did it for me. He's not first place in the standings. He hasn't won yet. I think he's playing great. I think, mechanically on the board, Hearthstone, he's a fantastic player. And I do think he has the opportunity to show that players coming through the Masters Tour can hang with some of the top players in GM, which I think is an issue that is perhaps being represented a little bit poorly, perhaps especially in the Americas region, TJ. No hands gamer accepted, of course. But I don't think there's any realistic argument you can make that he's actually the best player. He hasn't, proven that yet. Like we said, he hasn't won anything. He's not top of the standings. I also think part of being a Grandmaster, part of being a good player in Hearthstone is consistently bringing good lineups. And even though he went very well in Specialist, with his Miracle Priest, he is negative with the deck overall and continues to bring it. So right now, statistically, I can only suggest that is a bad decision, and I just can't have him up there in the upper echelons with the likes of Yala right now. But he does have the highest win rate overall right now, which is where I think this argument is coming from. Not sure if that's true after this week, but before this week, based on the tiny sample size that he had, and I'll help you out here a little bit, TJ, he has the highest win rate in Masters Tours and in Grandmasters, even ahead of Yala in Grandmasters, but of course his sample size is smaller, which is where I think this argument comes from, but I don't think it's valid.
All right, I'm going to pull something out of left field here because I'm in a desperate situation.
Yes.
You don't want to corner a TJ because then they start to attack you with semantics. The writer of this hot take did not put a period at the end of the sentence, which we can only assume means they wanted us to interpret it creatively. Okay? They wanted us to finish the thought. And I don't think anybody can argue with that. That just makes sense. Letta is the best player in Grandmasters, and now I'm going to add the rest of the hot take here for you, comma, at playing Miracle Priest. Period. And he's the only player bringing Miracle Priest, right? At least he was the only player bringing Miracle Priest this past week, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
And, I mean, if he's the only player, then he's the best. He's also the worst. But then he's the best player in Grandmasters, comma, at playing Miracle Priest. Boom.
Period. You mentioned it the first time. I was going to pull you up on it if you also didn't add a period to the end of the hot take.
I did add a period.
But you did it the first time, so I'll let you off.
I did the first time, period.
Yeah.
Really, though, I mean, this is a very hot take because we need like at least 2 more seasons to even think about calling Letta the best player in Grandmasters.
Yeah, I agree. On a serious point, I think Yala demonstrated for quite some time that he arguably was the best player in the world, but we didn't genuinely start talking about him in that bracket until he'd been doing it for 2 or 3 years straight, right? And that's kind of what it requires.
All right, well, I think we both get a point for that one because we both agreed.
We both agree that the real loser here is whoever wrote that hot take.
Whoever wrote that hot take. Yep, and that's the real loser. Which brings our final score, I believe, to 2-1. So, wow, Sada, it looks like you won an episode of Hot Takes. Is this the first time in history that you've won an episode of Hot Takes?
I lose track. Like, there's a few that I've claimed to have won, and then there's a few that I've won, but I kind of get punished for winning, and there's a few that I've won up until, like, the very last moment, and then it gets snatched away from me, so I don't know is the honest answer to that question, but go ahead. Do your thing.
All right. No, that's it. That's going to do it for this episode of Hot Takes. We have Match Tour Orgrimmar coming up this weekend. Sato, are you casting Match Tour Orgrimmar?
I am not, no. Weirdly enough, the Masters Tour that's in the European time zone, obviously, although they're all World of Warcraft themed now and remote, neither of the EU casters are going to be involved in. It's minus me and Raven.
Huh. It's kind of weird. The fact that I'm casting Match Tour Orgrimmar, which is the Match Tour for your region.
Yeah.
And you're not casting it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because of how weird that is, I think I'm going to need a confidence boost going into this weekend, since obviously you don't need it. And I'm going to award myself 2 Hot Takes bonus points. That's right, everybody. Sato loses. TJ wins again. Next time, just cast your own Masters Tours, man. Is it that hard?
How do I even respond to that?
You don't. And that's going to do it for episode 3 of Hot Takes for 2021. Make sure you do tune in to Master Tour Orgrimmar, which I will be casting and Sato will be not, which will happen this weekend. I believe the broadcast begins Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 a.m. Pacific. Should be a fun time. And then we'll see you next week for more Hot Takes.